This afternoon, we begin with new details just released by police about the suspected gunman behind last month's rampage near a North Phoenix hotel.
What's going on, y'all? Eric Mulder here with Codebreak Conversations. Thanks for joining me. In today's episode, I'm going to be addressing the active shooter event that took place August 28th, if I'm not mistaken, of this year, where one individual armed with an AR style rifle, assault rifle, as is most popularly known, and just went on a shooting rampage. I'm going to share with you some of the footage. Once again, I appreciate y'all for joining me early. I'm going to share with you some of the footage of the actual event. First and foremost, we'll go through it. Then we'll go through some additional details and discuss what we know now as to what motivated this individual to do what he did. For some, it may be shocking. For some of us, it won't be. So let's jump right in. Let me get rid of the screen right here. Yeah, like I said, for some of us, it may be shocking for some, but sadly, for many of us, this won't be anything new. With the state of the world, with the way things are right now. So with no further ado, let me see if I'm up on screen here. Yes, we're up on screen. No further ado, let's jump right in. This is a critical incident report from the Phoenix, Arizona Police Department. If you have any audio issues here, let me know.
I'm Sergeant Vincent Cole with the Phoenix Police Public Affairs Bureau. The information, audio, video, and pictures you're about to see are intended to provide details as we currently understand them of an officer-involved shooting that occurred on August 28, 2022. This video may contain strong language as well as graphic images which could be disturbing to some people. Viewer discretion is advised. The incident began around 8:30 on a Sunday night near 27th Avenue and Deer Valley Road when Phoenix police began receiving reports of shots fired in the area. Callers described a man shooting near a local motel and restaurant. Here are excerpts of several 911 calls received.
Phoenix 911, where is your emergency?
Hi, my name is I'm at
A lot of pauses because they redacted
West Deer Valley.
some of the vital
I
info.
believe there's a man behind us in front of the firing an automatic weapon.
Oh, that there?
Huh?
Was that what I just heard right now?
Yeah, right now.
Here's some of the
Phoenix
shooting.
911, where is your
background.
emergency?
There's this guy like shooting. Oh, he just threw the window. He
What's
just threw something out the window.
location?
I'm at the across from the. He's got a gun in his hand with like a helmet on. He's shot like 20 times.
Okay.
He just broke the window.
He just, hit the
He's-
window.
He's in the. And he's at the parking lot. He's walking around.
Phoenix 911, what is the address of your emergency?
We're on Deer Valley Road. We're at by
Deer-
I-17. There's a shootout in the parking lot.
Okay, what's the, do you know the address?
I don't know what the address is, man. I'm not from this part of the
Okay,
town.
do you know where the shooter is?
They're in the parking lot right now.
The shooter is still in the parking lot?
Yeah, there's like a white vehicle shooting with another individual.
Okay, we have officers headed out there right now.
Much of the incident was captured on surveillance cameras from several businesses in the area. The cameras from the motel record video only, so we have taken the silent video from the motel and matched it to the nearest second with the sound of recorded surveillance video from a gas station next door to give you a better understanding of the events that took place. Video from inside the motel shows the suspect leaving his room wearing tactical gear, including a helmet, a ballistic vest, a gas mask, knee pads, and armed with a rifle and holding a Molotov cocktail.
Back that up,
Once
y'all.
outside, surveillance cameras from several of the events that took place. Video from inside the motel shows the suspect leaving his room wearing tactical gear, including a helmet, a ballistic vest, a gas mask, knee pads,
Let me ask you a quick question. What would you do if you just happened to be in that hotel or walking to your vehicle outside and you see somebody armed like this walking outside? What would your first response be? Have you ever thought anything like that through? I know many people that follow me have different opinions when it comes to being armed. But here, I think that this is another reason why I think it's so vitally important to be a weapons carrier, be skilled with your firearms, be skilled with your weapons, so that if a situation like this pops up, you can do the best that you can to get involved and potentially end the threat before it even gets started. Crazy part about this was the guy had body armor, so proficiency would have to be at the utmost, and you would have to be able to take proficient and consistent headshots. But just something to think about. Put some comments in the chat or in the comment section below. How would you respond if you saw something like this? Some guy walking like this.
And armed with a rifle and holding a Molotov cocktail. Once outside, he almost immediately began walking around firing his rifle at buildings and vehicles. Less than 30 seconds later, as the suspect is walking through the parking lot, a white car pulls in.
Real quick, dude is just walking around all nonchalant, just shooting. Clearly, he's trying to draw the attention of the police or I don't know what other motivation there could be. And that's going to come into play later on once we discuss some of his motivations.
The suspect keys in on the car and opens fire on it, striking and killing an adult male and an adult female. 3 other people inside the car take off running.
How crazy and how tragic is that? And traumatic would that be for those individuals who survived this situation? You just happen to be pulling up, probably maybe going to the hotel, maybe going to that Waffle House restaurant to get something to eat, and some random person begins opening fire on you when you're totally unprepared. And this is another reason why, just thinking tactically, just thinking from the perspective of being able to protect yourself and always thinking with a tactical mindset. When I go out in public, I'm always wearing something I can run in. Even if it's a dress shoe or wherever I go, you'll never see me out in public with sandals or flip-flops on. Never. Because I'm always thinking that there may be a situation where I may have to run for my life or push my vehicle or something along those lines. I always try to dress in a fashion to where I could take off running if I had to. And I know that doesn't necessarily work for everyone, but it's something to consider.
The suspect continued to wander the parking lot, firing off dozens of rounds at random unoccupied cars. He made his way closer to a restaurant with people inside and threw a Molotov cocktail at the window. The window did not break and the device did not ignite. The suspect came in contact with several community members that he pointed a gun at but did not shoot.
I wonder why he decided not to shoot at them.
For the next several minutes, the suspect walks around randomly, firing dozens of shots. Some of the bullets flying across Deer Valley Road, piercing cars and buildings, injuring a couple of innocent bystanders. As police neared the scene, the dispatcher advises shots are still being fired.
As of 2043, they are still hearing shots being fired. And we do have one victim so far that was shot in the ear and the arm.
As officers arrived on scene, they were immediately met with a barrage of gunfire.
It looks like he's shooting over the wall. Most likely, these officers didn't even know where the gunfire is coming from.
2 officers were injured. 1 was able to return fire but did not hit the suspect. Officers use call signs to identify themselves on the radio. Terminology such as 933 NORA identifies a specific patrol unit. In this radio transmission, you will also hear 999, which is a police radio code for an officer needing help urgently.
934 North, taking round.
934 North, taking round.
930 for my partner's hit. He's in the parking lot of
933.
Charlie 9 officers are taking rounds up there on Deer Valley.
999 West Deer Valley, 999 West Deer Valley on Charlie Deck 92044.
I'm hit. I'm right next to the shooter.
Let me tell y'all something. For those of y'all who don't know, who are unfamiliar with law enforcement or a tactical situation, when you hear an officer say something along those lines, like officer hit, shots fired, there's nothing that gets the chill bumps on your arms or the hairs on the back of your neck to stand up. There's nothing like that. Because you know that somebody that you work side by side with, most likely, or someone, at the very least, someone who wears the same uniform that you do, who's there to help protect and serve, as corny as that may sound, but that's the reality of it. They're in a pretty crappy situation, most likely. And I don't think there's anything, the times I've heard those calls go over the airway, man, I'm telling you, it makes you dialed in. If you have any semblance of a tactical mindset, it makes you dialed in to a whole different level, to be there and try to do everything that you can to help. It's hard to even describe.
Body-worn cameras are used by all officers assigned to patrol and several specialty units. Per policy, they are worn at mid-torso level and capture the view of the line of sight from that perspective. It's important to note that the body camera does not capture everything the officer sees, and the officer does not see everything the body camera captures. When activated, both audio and video turn on. The body-worn camera has a buffer of video without audio for the 30 seconds prior to activation. This feature is designed to capture incidents that happen suddenly where an officer doesn't immediately activate the camera. The Phoenix Police Department does not currently use in-car camera systems. One of the injured officers was pinned down by gunfire. Other officers devised a plan to safely go in and extract him from the area. The injured officer was loaded into the back of a police patrol Tahoe and driven to a local hospital. Body-worn camera footage of the initial contact is not available as the officers involved did not activate their camera.
Go all the way there. Throw us out. Get them out of here. Go. Take him. Let's go. Go. You're good, buddy. You're good.
The gunfire from the suspect eventually stopped. When officers approached him, they found him dead from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. Investigators processing the scene located nearly 200 spent rifle casings, 5 empty magazines, unused flashbangs, which is an explosive device used to temporarily disorient a person, and other tactical equipment. The officer who returned fire in this incident has been on the department approximately 4 years and is assigned to the Cactus Park precinct. The suspect in this case has been identified as Isaiah Williams, a 24-year-old male. This incident is the subject of an internal investigation.
I'll end this section of the video right there. We're not done, not even close. But I just want to say I had a lot of difficulty finding an actual picture of Isaiah Williams. I found a few on Reddit, but I wasn't able to verify whether that they were actually him or not. So I had to pretty much leave him alone. But a couple of points I want to make real quick before we proceed. It's tough in that situation where those officers had to decide what to do when it comes down to the officer who got hit. On one end, you have, man, should I wait for medical or maybe take him to an ambulance or something along those lines? But considering how dynamic the situation still was, I think that how they responded, they put him in the black and white, took him to, and I'm sure it was dependent on the level of emergency, the how serious his injuries were. I'm sure that played a factor as well. But knowing that in most active situations, when I say active, I'm talking about an incident that hasn't been brought to a halt yet. The officers have not yet been able to make the scene safe by stopping the threat. They had to respond. And in most situations, and I would say in every tactical situation, medical responds by what we call holding short, meaning they don't come into the danger zone until the officers say that everything is in Las Vegas and Metro, we would say code 4, meaning everything's good, everything's calm, the scene is safe. Now you can bring in the elements, you can bring in medical or the other, whatever other party, that entity that is needed to help investigate or get people the attention, medical attention, whatever it may be that they need. So considering the fact that the scene was still dynamic, I think that the decision that they made to immediately get him in the vehicle and get him the help he needed was spot on. It was excellent. May not always be like that in every situation, but here I think that it was definitely the best response as far as what I can tell. So getting back to the primary point, now we had an individual who, for whatever reason, decided to don body armor, an assault rifle, have a Molotov cocktail, gas mask, flashbang grenades, and then decide he wanted to go out into the public and just wreak havoc. So now the question is, why? Like, what motivated him? What would motivate someone to do something like this? Well, we have some information. As always, you just give it a little bit of time and the truth starts to come out. Or should I say, more information begins to come to light. Let me refresh this here real quick. And again, for those of y'all who are familiar with me and my channel, you probably won't be too surprised as the information starts to pan out.
This afternoon, we begin with new details just released by police about the suspected gunman behind last month's rampage near a North Phoenix hotel. Thanks for joining us for 12 News at 4. I'm Kariba Devine.
And I'm Tram Mai. The latest report gives us the clearest picture yet of the motive behind the madness. Team 12's Michael Dowd pours through those documents, providing new insight.
Nearly 200 rounds.
He's got a gun in his hand with like a helmet on. He's shot like 20 times.
Peppering a parking lot, hotel rooms, and police cars.
Oh, he's right there. Where? Right there, right there, right there, right there. Watch.
But why did this happen? New details from police documents paint a picture of 24-year-old Isaiah Williams struggling. His friends told police that Isaiah once thought about becoming an officer, but in 2020 started to post anti-government and anti-police ideas on social media.
Again, what are we hearing? Had aspirations and dreams at one point of being an officer himself, but then something happened, and now he's posting anti-government and anti-law enforcement. Again, remember what's going on. He's a student. If I'm not mistaken, he was either a current student or had just graduated. I think he had just graduated from ASU, Arizona State University. I'm sure they'll say a little bit more. but we're trying to paint. We have a big puzzle here, and we're attempting to put it all together. We're putting it all together. Let's get back to the video here.
His parents told officers that Williams just graduated from ASU as a film study major, but couldn't find work. They say he became upset over the pandemic, racial tensions, police violence, and the economy. So much.
Let's back that up a second here. He started getting upset over the COVID pandemic response, and I can totally understand that, to be honest with you. He graduated from ASU as a film major. So it's like, it's not exactly the career field that you get into if you want to be financially set, as well as racial tensions in America, high-profile police use of force incidents, and inflation had weighed heavily on him. But what do we see consistent with a lot of the violence that we've seen over the last few years? Racial tension, high-profile police use of force incidents, or I should say, how they are often interpreted in our modern social media, in entertainment, in the mainstream media. That's the emphasis, how they are interpreted. And plus, he's a college student, so Lord knows what he was taught while he attended college. Lord only knows. I can only imagine.
And the economy, so much so that in April, his parents said they took away his AR-15 and handgun.
That's how bad it got, y'all. It got so bad that he had a rifle and his parents took it away from him. So clearly he had made some form of threat of wanting to hurt someone or some group, as evidenced here. I don't know if they had made any complaints or sought out any help. I wish that they did. I don't want to assume that they didn't. Who knows? But I'm telling you, in this world that we're living in right now, we cannot ignore the signs when we hear someone who is angry over the current state of our nation. I'm not just talking about being pissed off over, the economy and whoever's running the country, whether you agree with them or disagree with them politically. But when you're talking, it has escalated to the point to where you think they may be potentially dangerous. Those are warning signs that cannot be ignored, regardless of what side of the political aisle you fall on.
But on August 28th, their son was holding a rifle, shooting at random.
He came up to the hotel window and he pointed through the window. We were all standing inside.
Police reports show that in the weeks leading up to the shooting, he sold his car for $9,000 and went to Houston. A week later, he was back. And on the day of the shooting, Williams reportedly told a friend he wanted to go to Iraq to fight for the Kurdish forces because he, quote, wanted to fight for something. Hours later, just after 2 a.m. on August 28th, Isaiah Williams began shooting.
Okay, let's look at it like this. I think I backed up by mistake. Excuse me, y'all. Got to get to back where I was. Just think about that for a second. Let's just evaluate what we heard so far. There was information saying that at one point he wanted to join the Marine Corps. And then, if I'm not mistaken, I think I read that somewhere if they didn't say that here. At one point he wanted to join the military and wanted to be a police officer. I'm not sure when college came into play, and I'm not sure to what degree college had an impact on him, but I guarantee you that, but I would say it would be a safe bet to say that it played a consistent role, especially looking at the field he went into. And what I'm sure had a very liberal perspective, a very progressive, left-leaning perspective, because you go from wanting to be a soldier and a cop, now you want it to go overseas and fight basically, and fight what did they say? Against or for the Kurdish? I mean, it's just like the dude just went off the deep end. Like he just totally went off the deep end. I don't know what was going on in his head at the time, but he had his message and his motivations completely changed to the point to where we get this. right here.
Police reports show that in the weeks leading up to the shooting, he sold his car for $9,000
Move
and
up
went
a
to
little
Houston
bit.
back. And on the day of the shooting, Williams reportedly told a friend he wanted to go to Iraq to fight for the Kurdish forces because he, quote, wanted to fight for something. Hours later, just after 2 a.m. on August 28th, Isaiah Williams began shooting. In the end, Williams killed 2 people and hurt 2 officers before police said he died by his own gun. Now, guys, there's still a lot of unanswered questions here. In fact, the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force also talked with an Uber driver Isaiah Williams met in Houston and have been logging the conversations between the two in the lead up to this shooting. Guys, back to you.
I wonder what that meant, if there's anything going on there. This is the most current information that I have as far as what motivated him, what drove him. Dwayne, you hit it, brother. Current liberal talking points. Exactly. And the reality is, even more of a reality is the fact that this isn't uncommon. I'm going to put a video in the notes below. Let me get rid of this one here. That I did a few, matter of fact, let me do this. Bear with me, y'all. Let me share something with y'all. I got to scan and find it through my videos here on my channel. I had made a video a few months ago addressing this very topic. Because I see it for what it is, as the true epidemic. Even though many in our mainstream media act as if there's no issue when it comes to those on the political left, if we're honest with ourselves, if we're truly honest with ourselves, we will see that there is a consistent theme in our nation when it comes to those who are oftentimes, not in every situation, I don't want to say that, but there's oftentimes a consistent theme in our country with those who decide they want to ambush the police. I'm not going to show the whole video, but I'm going to show excerpts of the presentation that I made not that long ago to make my point. And this is part of the reason why people have such an issue, when it comes to trusting the media, because the information that we get is often skewed, or is often, we don't get all the facts. That's just a cold reality when having these discussions and these conversations about. I'll just let the video play out. Just me sharing my thoughts here. Our law enforcement, I honestly believe that literally terrified of the police, who truly believes that the police are hunting down black men. He listens to people like LeBron James and that attorney Crump. Benjamin. He listens to people like that, and he is terrified of the police. So when he gets stopped by a cop, he takes off and he runs, or he decides to resist. He could be putting his life in someone else's hands, because anything can happen after that point. Or what do we do with the individual who sees every report, because those are the ones that they post that make the headlines, that make the nightly top news story, when they hear about the rare occasion, and I said rare occasion, where anyone is shot by the police. And on that point, child, for those of y'all who are joining me, you may be like, what the heck? Am I seeing two over here? No, yes, you are to some degree. You see me with a bigger beard and me now with less of a beard. But I'm addressing the mindset, the mentality of I'm addressing the power that the media has over most of us to influence how we think and how we respond to different situations, to different incidents. Most people assume that the information that they get from TV is factual, that the mainstream media is not going to lie to them, that they're going to tell them the truth. But I'm hoping as time goes on, more people start to wake up and understand that that's not always the case. That is definitely not always the case. In regard to the fact that what I had mentioned there just a second ago, most people think that when we hear people like LeBron James or Benjamin Crump, I brought them up because I remember distinctly incidents or occasions where they said that black men are being hunted down. As a matter of fact, Benjamin Crump actually has a book entitled Open Season. That's the narrative, right? That's the narrative that is often sold to us in our country. And if you just simply believe blindly the information that you hear, it's understandable. Clearly, I'm not justifying it because I'm against all this foolishness, but it's understandable how some people can develop an absolute distrust, mistrust, hatred of law enforcement. But let's take an additional look at this information here. We're going to back out of this screen for a second. And I'm going to open up another screen and just share a bit of info that often goes overlooked. It's something we heard about a long time ago, but for some reason, I mean, people like me, I bring it up all the time. But let's look at some numbers. When we hear the term, hopefully y'all can see this. Hopefully this is big enough for y'all to see. If not, I'll just read it to you. Let me see. I'm going to blow up my screen, see if yeah, you guys can see that. Definitely. Let me just share a bit of information with you from the Washington Post. And honestly, in our current society, in this day and age, with the reporting we have, this is probably the most accurate research database that we have in regard to the actual number of police shootings. Probably the best thing that we have at this moment that I'm aware of. If anyone knows of anything that is better or another good source, please share it with me. But the Washington Post started recording police uses of deadly force in particular in 2015. January 2015. So let's look at it like this. So from 2015 till the present, this is how many people, these are how many unarmed black men, see, black and unarmed, that the police have shot since 2015. That is 145 right here, a grand total of 145 unarmed black men have been shot by the police that we know of so far. And as a qualifier, as I often say, unarmed does not automatically equate to you not being dangerous. I share this statistic routinely. I want to make sure that everyone is aware of this. On an almost annual basis, almost every year, roughly 4,000 people are killed where there's no weapon involved, where it's just hands. Roughly 4,000. If you combine the data from the CDC and the FBI National Victim Witness Survey, almost every year, 4,000 people are killed where there's no weapon involved. Keep that in your head, please. So if we look at on an annual basis, in 2015, it was the highest. There were 38 unarmed black men shot and killed by the police. 2016 was 20. 2017, 21, 22 in 2018, 2019 there were 12, 2020, 18, 2021, 8, and currently there are 6. So what we see is overall the numbers have gone down. Of course, you had 2020 being an exceptional year with the riots, the BLM riots, and all the foolishness that took place throughout the course of that year. So 145 over a span of 7 years, 6.5 years, 145 unarmed black men. Now, for some people, they still may look at those numbers and say, well, that's just too much. Okay, let's go with that. Let's go with that. But let's back up and let's take an even deeper dive. Let's look and try to understand how many people, how many contacts do the police make with the public every year? How many contacts do the police make with the public every year? Because I think that that's a factor. I think that that does definitely play a role. This is a report called Dispelling the Myths Surrounding Police Use of Force, Use of Lethal Force. It's a PDF. If you go to Dolan Consulting Group, you can download it yourself. It is a wealth of knowledge, a tremendous amount of information. In this report, they reference a report where some citizens got together and some researchers got together and they decided they wanted to determine how many contacts the police have with the public every year. Let me just read some of this. In this report, several popular claims about the police use of lethal force were carefully examined and all were found to be myths. In one last parting analysis, it is helpful to look at deaths from police use of force from a big picture perspective. Big picture perspective, y'all. Keep that in your head. While it is unknown how many police-citizen contacts occur every year, it's impossible to know exactly. That's 100% true. Studies that examined 3 cities and 3 small towns found that the number of calls for service the police handle averages out of 0.6 calls per year for every person in the community. And these are 3 cities and 3 small towns. Number of calls for service at 0.6, what was that? 0.6 calls per year for every person in the community. As there are 320, and this was done a few years ago. I think the number is we're at 340 million, if I'm not mistaken, people in the United States. But here it says, as there are 321,418,820 people residing in the U.S., this means the police across the nation handle about 292 calls for service each year. And I would actually argue, based on the research that they did, I mean, depending on what cities, how large the cities are, this number might be too small, honestly. And this is just talking about calls for service. So you're talking about 192 million, nearly 193 million calls for service every year. Then he goes on to say, as this does not include proactive stops by police officers and informal contacts unrelated to calls for service, we can double this figure to estimate the average number of official police-citizen contacts across the nation each year. So you're talking about self-initiated stops. I see someone speeding. I see someone jaywalking. Someone fans me down, like somebody waves me down. It's not an official call for service. It is something that I initiate myself. That number can easily be doubled. And then they come to the conclusion here, an estimated 385 million police and citizen contacts on an annual basis. And this is back when we had 20 million less people in the country. So if you examine that now, also knowing that the police make anywhere from 10 to 11 million arrests every year, 48,000, actually the number has risen, if I'm not mistaken, over the last couple of years. That number has been 50 or 60,000 officers who have been assaulted on duty, according to the FBI, not the FBI Law Enforcement Officers Killed or Assaulted report, LEOKA, L-E-O-K-A report. I think that number has increased also. So if you take all those factors into consideration, and then on top of it, when you look at it percentage-wise, there's data that shows that a black male is the most likely, when you look at a percentage from a percentage perspective, is most likely the one who is going to shoot and kill a police officer. All of those factors taken into consideration, when we look at the number 145 black males who have been shot and killed by the police over a 6.5, 7 year period, unarmed black men, that number does not sound that bad. And if it was an actual epidemic, that would be happening, those numbers would be happening on a weekly basis or even a monthly basis if we were going to be looking at an actual epidemic. But we see nothing of the sort. And that's why people like me and other conservative-minded folks, or even just sensible people, you don't even have to be politically conservative, are constantly saying, you guys want us to look over here at the lesser problem, when over here you can look at the number of black homicides where black people are hunted down, where we're actually being hunted down and killed by people who look just like us, other black folks, when the number is hovering around 10,000 a year, considering that 80 to 90% of all killings take place by people that look like them, and knowing that the black homicide rate for a young black male, I think between the ages of 14 and 35 or 14 to 40, that homicide is the number one killer. The number one killer. Some of these liberal folks want us to focus on this relatively minuscule number in comparison to how we're dying off on each and every year on an annual basis. You guys want us to focus on the lesser problem while there's a significantly greater problem going on over here. And that's why people like me get so pissed off and get so frustrated with everything that's going on in our nation. We have become an increasingly godless nation. As far as the black community, we have a black community are always told what to think and how to think and what we should be concerned about. And God forbid if you step outside those bounds, you will be called every name in the book. You'll be completely ostracized and mocked and ridiculed. That's why so many people who think like I do, black folks who think like I do, don't say nothing. You don't know how many times I get private messages, people saying to me, man, I love what you're doing, keep it up. But they're concerned about how other people will respond if they start speaking out more. I'm seeing more and more people being increasingly bold, and I'm thankful for that. But again, when you have people who have been manipulated by the mainstream media to believe lies and exaggerations, we get this kind of garbage. We get men going out there, young men going out, hunting down the police, hating their country, and ignoring a lot of the facts, a lot of the evidence. And we're seeing more and more death. And as we walk further and further away from a biblical worldview, you'll see people more open to attempting to take justice into their own hands, even though it is completely a misguided justice. But we got a comment over here. I want to read it. A young man who wanted to serve his country means something in the context of protecting. Then between whatever was instilled in him at college and all the progressive, literal, or liberal indoctrination through social media, the mainstream media, and this current administration contributed to a lost mind that was malleable to such evil, violent rhetoric. Very well said, bro. But make no mistake about it, he is fully accountable for his actions. No doubt. Well said, brother. Boy, that's how you do it. That's how you get down, Dwayne. I appreciate you, brother. I want to read that again, y'all. I think that is he said it, he put in better words than I ever could. A young man who wanted to serve his country means something in the context of protecting. Then between whatever was instilled in him at college and all the progressive liberal indoctrination through social media, mainstream media, and this current administration contributed to a lost mind. Right, excellent point right there. Let me get this screen right here out of the way. A lost mind. You already had to have somebody who's susceptible to that type of influence. Already weak-minded, already had some mental health issues going on for all we know. That was malleable to such evil, violent rhetoric. But make no mistake about it, he's fully accountable for his actions. So whereas we can understand how something like this can go down, we can understand how this can happen, we also need to understand that there's no excuse for that. No excuse. 2020, with all the rioting and people burning down buildings and black-owned, claiming that Black Lives Matter and burning down black businesses, burning up communities, stores in predominantly black neighborhoods, but yet saying Black Lives Matter out of their mouths, complete hypocrites. And whereas I can understand how somebody can be manipulated, just like Dwayne said, whereas we can understand how people can be manipulated when every time you turn on the TV or every time you turn on your social media, Instagram, Twitter, or wherever whatever social media site you're on, you're seeing another video of a black man being beaten up or held down by the police or being shot by the police. And the headlines, unarmed black man shot by the police. Oh, you mean like Jacob Blake, when initially said that he was unarmed, but come to find out that he was actually in a fight with the police, tased, had a knife, picked up a knife, was walking away from the cops, going towards his vehicle, that same Jacob Blake? Or all the other people who had guns on them or in Alton Sterling, guns in their possession? All the lies that have been told? Michael Brown, his DNA was found on the police officer's gun, charged after the cops. Other witnesses who weren't willing to testify in public, who had to be forced to testify in front of a grand jury, forced to testify. Some people even, if you ever read and actually study up on the Michael Brown case and not just listen to the rhetoric, hands up, don't shoot, a complete and total lie, completely made up by Michael Brown's friend, who recanted that when actually interviewed by the police or by the Department of Justice. When we find out that there's been so many mischaracterizations and false information being put out there by the media, and by the time the facts actually come out, it's too late, because you've already incited a society to look at law enforcement as the enemy. It's too late. There's nothing you can do about it. The left ran on defunding the police for almost 2 years, ran on defunding and even to some degree, some people saying abolish the police. They ran on that. And now they're trying to backtrack when you see the police are like, okay, you don't want us. You have cops quitting, retiring in the droves, record numbers. Most agencies cannot reach their recruiting numbers. You have officers going out there in some of these neighborhoods basically feeling as if they have no protection, that they don't have any backing by the citizens. They don't have any backing by their administration. And you have cops quitting, leaving, which is basically leaving, especially in a lot of these liberal-leaning cities. Look at New York. Look at LA. Look at Baltimore. Look at Baltimore, Maryland. Look at DC. Look at Atlanta. We can go on and on. Austin, Texas. All across the country. Up there in Washington State, Oregon, you see nothing but utter San Francisco. All over the country. Oakland, California. What you're seeing is total chaos, anarchy happening all over our country. And you see the result of these policies and a result of, I would dare say, easily a decade of indoctrination, of BLM, Black Lives Matter related indoctrination to get people to hate the police, which is ultimately founded in a communistic, Marxist, socialistic perspective that wants to a complete and utter upheaval of the United States government. That is ultimately what lies beneath everything that we're seeing. Going even deeper, we're talking it's a demonic force, demonic activity that's taking place. But on the natural level, you have people who want to see the United States come crashing down and some socialistic Marxist utopia come in and take its place. That's what these people want. And if you read anything about, if you know anything about the tactics of the communists, this is nothing new. This is how they were able to influence a whole host of blacks in the 50s and 60s to join up with the Communist Party. If you're not familiar with this name, Manning Johnson, look up Manning Johnson. He wrote a book. I'm drawing a blank on the name. I have the book. I read it. I read it in no time. It's a quick read. You probably can read it in 2 days, honestly. Color, Communism, and Common Sense, something along those lines. Manning, Manning Johnson. And he got sucked into the Communist Party, got caught up in everything that was going on. But then as time went on, he started seeing them for who they truly were and how they used race, and they used the racial tensions that have plagued us as a nation, pretty much since our nation's founding. They use those as a means by which attempting to dismantle our country. And law enforcement being one of the main means by which they go about it. Because if you get rid of law enforcement, what do you have? You have utter chaos in our nation. If law enforcement is being destroyed, what are we seeing happening with our military? Look at what we're seeing happening with our military. Social justice, wokeness, critical race theory coming in and totally destroying and making our nation, our military, weaker. It is happening everywhere. And I pray to God that people start to wake up, because it will lead to our overall destruction as a society. Hold on 1 second. Let me get this one here. Total lies, man. Absolutely, brother. All based off lies. That's the thing that frustrates me the most with this entire BLM movement. They use the emotion and the tension that already is always underlying in the surface. They completely ignore the radical shifts and transformations that have happened in our country that have made things better. They completely overlook these things, and they say, look at this problem right here. And then here comes the mainstream media jumping on board. CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, heck, Fox News even, all of them jumping on board. Some of the main sports leagues, NFL, MLB, NBA, all jumping on board, trying to be who can be the most woke. Trying to see who cares the most. What's the word? There's a term that's used as far as like who can be the most concerned or whatever. There's a popular term nowadays. I'm drawing a blank on it right now. But in the process of that, they don't understand the overall impact that they are having on the violence and everything that we're seeing in our nation. Or they do. And I believe that some of them do. They know exactly what they're doing, and they're proud of it. They're proud of it because in the end, they will ultimately accomplish what they want. What we got here? As Christians, where we at? We do not seek to please mankind, but our sovereign Lord. And these blue check mark, purple hair weirdo are nobody to care about anywho. But for the grace of God, love your brother. But for the grace of God, love you, bro. The policy is to divide and tear down while seeking more power over the peons. Absolutely. The elitist mindset is on display, and I praise God that he used the plandemic, right? Plandemic, to expose it all. They now say the quiet parts out loud because it no longer matters to them. Tell it. Thank you, brother. It's called Color, Communism, and Common Sense. Thank you. That's the title I was looking for. That was the title. If you are not familiar with this book by Manning Johnson, do yourself a favor, pick it up. Color, Communism, and Common Sense. You'll thank. Just come back and thank me later. That book was a definite. It wasn't a wake up call for me. I already knew some of the tactics that these people engaged in, but just hearing about it, especially from 50s and 60s, that was probably the most surprising part for me as an individual. Man, over the last few years, I've learned so much over the last 10 years or so, 10, 12 years, about the history of our nation, things that I've never heard before. All the years in school. I'm 52 years old. all the years in school, the things I've learned that I sought out on my own, or somebody, one of my Facebook friends or someone on social media posted about, and then I just went down a rabbit hole and just started studying. My goodness, the things I've learned over the years. And I know for some of my friends who have known me over the years, some of y'all probably like, man, what happened to Eric? Like, you used to be cool or whatever. I just started learning, folks. I learned that there's a history that some people want us to know, and then there's the truth. That's what I learned. And I pray to God that more people start to wake up, honestly. And I just want to say this note, and I kind of wanted to leave it where Dwayne had broke it down the best, but I just want to just say at the very end, I've heard people say that politics is downstream of culture, and I completely agree with that. And if our culture continues to move away from the things of God, we will continue to see more and more things like this taking place. And we will see the foolishness just continue to abound more and more. I mean, just look at it. A few years ago, will we ever be talking about drag queen story hour in our public libraries or in some schools, or the overly sexual books in our schools, or talking about giving our children hormone blockers to stop their puberty as juveniles? I'm talking about 6, 7, 8 years old. People actually arguing for support trans kids. But honestly, y'all, or the complete and utter defamation of marriage that we've seen over the last few years. I want what we're talking about here, primarily the abolishing or defunding of the police, which has increased the murder rate and the violent crime rate across the country astronomically. I've seen some reports where the crime shot up 800% in some cities. This is coming from one side, y'all. This is coming from one side of the political aisle. All I ask you to do is just, instead of believing everything that you've been told over the years, instead of just believing things to be true, why not take some time and start studying and doing your own research? Do some research on the history of the Democratic Party. See who was against all the civil rights legislation, since the founding of our country. Who fought against it. Look at how the Republican Party was founded, why they were founded, how they were founded as an abolitionist party against slavery. Just do some research on your own. And when you start hearing people complaining about immigration, instead of assuming immigration, that if you're against immigration, you're racist, look at who is impacted the most, who is most negatively impacted by illegal immigration. I'm not talking about general immigration. I'm talking about illegal immigration. Look at what ethnic group is impacted negatively the most by illegal immigration. Blacks, black men in particular. You will come to find out that, or they love to use the whole voter suppression nonsense, especially down there in Georgia. But yet with the new voter laws, what you see is more black people voting because they want to act. It's the old adage, the soft bigotry, I would say hard bigotry of low expectations. That's what I would say. Black people can't get IDs. Really? Seriously. How insulting is that? To me as a black man, that's extremely insulting. I can get an ID. When my mom, God rest her soul, before she passed, if she had trouble getting around, she knew who to call. She didn't have a car, never drove a day in her life. But when she needed something, hon, I need to go get a new ID. Or hon, I need to go get this. Eric, can you go and take me to go do this or that? I got your mom. And if a day came about where I couldn't do it, there was another family member who would step up. Or her apartment complex would step up and help her out. Or she would have a friend at her apartment complex who would take her where she needed to go. Man, these people mock us and they use it like they give a damn about us. And they don't. They don't. They only care about black folks in as much as we vote to keep them in office. In the meantime, they are destroying the fabric of our society. They're wanting to, You have people in the inner city who want guns to be able to protect themselves. They want to be able to protect themselves because they live in the hood and there's violence all around them. But you got these same people who claim to care so much about us are the main ones who are saying, no, you don't need a gun. And making it increasingly difficult for the average law-abiding citizen to be able to protect themselves. In the meantime, the criminal, he ain't following those laws. He's doing whatever he wants to do. Irrational, y'all. Please start thinking about these things before you go into the to the voting box and decide that you want to vote these people in. Look at what they bring along with them. Your ability to be able to worship freely and share your faith freely and speak freely. Who are the ones who are trying to take away your ability, trying to take away an individual's ability to speak freely? The freedom of speech, the freedom of religion, the right to bear arms. And everybody loves to throw out the word, saying so-and-so's a tyrant or they're trying to take away your right. When it's all said and done, there's only one party that's doing that. And all you have to do is follow the laws and the rules and the policies that they push. Please wake up, y'all. Please. Whew. I'm sorry, I got off a little tangent there, but once again, y'all, do whatever you can to just start speaking up about some of these issues. People need to know the truth. Code Red Conversations was founded on the mindset that there are so many lies being sold and told in our society that people need to step up their game. And more and more people need to be bold with the truth. Who cares if you take a little bit of heat? Everybody gets it nowadays. There's nothing. If you have some semblance of common sense, you're going to get it. It just comes with the territory. Speak your mind. Speak the truth. Speak the truth in love. Be tough when you have to. But ultimately, especially for us as believers, do the best we can to speak the truth in love, but be consistent. But don't back down from speaking facts. Speak the truth, the hard truth. People need to hear it. But you ain't black if you don't vote for old Sleepy Joe. You're right, bro. I'm sorry. I don't. You know what, man? I probably done got my black card rejected a long time ago, but it's all good with me. I know who I am, and I know in eternity, by the grace of God, I know that ultimately I'll have pleased Him. That's my ultimate desire. So, anyway, y'all, I appreciate y'all for joining me today. Very passionate discussion. You know how I get when it comes to these police-related matters. I really can get going. I really get going. I really get moving on these topics. It really moves my heart because there's so many people who have lost their lives running, fighting, hating the police, and it's all a bunch of garbage. I'm not saying that police are perfect, clearly. Definitely not saying that. If you know anything about Code Red Conversations, you know I get on the police just as much as I get on the citizens. As a man seeking after God's heart, a man trying to walk this Christian journey, a flawed walk, I have to admit. But my desire is to proclaim truth in its many forms as far as whatever topic I'm addressing. I mean, ultimately, there's truth and then there's error. But I appreciate you there, Dwayne. But in the meantime, y'all, as always, I love y'all. Thanks for coming on out and following me today, following this episode. Had a pretty good turnout throughout the course of the day. I appreciate everyone who stopped in, even though it was only for a few minutes. Make sure you head on over to Code Red Conversations. If you haven't subscribed as of yet, please do. Trying to get to 2,000. That's my next goal, hitting the 2,000 mark, not too far away. Please share my content. Please share some of my videos, especially my YouTube content. That's the toughest one to grow. Well, once again, y'all, as always, stay safe, God bless, and make sure you join the conversation. Peace.